Hi everyone, this is Erin MacArthur, your course librarian, and in this video we're talking about literature reviews and how they relate to evidence-based practice. This video will cover where a literature review belongs in evidence-based practice, different types of literature reviews, those for quantitative research, qualitative research, and systematic reviews, identifying and searching relevant databases, documenting your searches for systematic reviews, and building a table and evaluating the evidence you find. To start, let's briefly review the definition of evidence-based practice, or EBP, and its core principles. EBP is the linking of current research findings with patients' conditions, values, and circumstances, and the explicit use of the current best evidence for making decisions about the care of individuals. Our access to computers and the internet has opened the door to tremendous amounts of both good and bad information, and so it's critical that you as DNP graduates will be able to find and evaluate that information and translate it into practice. According to your text, the core principles of EBP are 1. Formulating the clinical question, 2. Identifying the most relevant articles, research, and other best evidence, 3. Critically evaluating the evidence, 4. Integrating and applying the evidence, and 5. Reevaluating the application of evidence and making necessary changes. Two of those core principles directly refer to the literature review process: identifying relevant articles and other evidence, and critically evaluating it. So being able to successfully conduct a literature review is an essential skill in evidence-based practice. Now, let's go over different types of literature reviews. A literature review is an essential component of both quantitative and qualitative research. In quantitative research, the literature review is used to direct the planning and execution of the study, and is conducted before the study is conducted, at the beginning of the research process. After the study is completed, a second limited review is conducted to identify any studies published since the original literature review. In qualitative research, on the other hand, the literature review may be completed at various times in the process, according to the type of study being conducted. In phenomenological research, for example, the literature review is not conducted until after the data from the study has already been collected, in order to avoid creating bias in the researchers. An ethnographic study, on the other hand, would include a literature review conducted at the beginning of the research project, much like with quantitative research. A systematic review is a specialized type of literature review and is very common in nursing research. Systematic reviews are structured, comprehensive syntheses of research studies in a particular healthcare area, used to determine the best research evidence available for evidence-based practice. Systematic reviews of randomized controlled trials are considered the strongest level of evidence for practice. A systematic review requires a comprehensive, exhaustive search strategy to identify relevant studies, which will be documented in the review, as well as stated inclusion and exclusion criteria for studies reported. Systematic reviews include a methodology section where the names of databases searched, search terms used, and limiters or parameters will all need to be reported. Regardless of which type of literature review you're conducting, they will all require you to identify and search research databases for relevant and current resources. Using the library is essential for a thorough literature review. A good deal of academic research is locked down behind publisher paywalls, and so is difficult, expensive, or impossible to access on the open web. Library databases can also make it easier to discover related resources, since they use standardized search terms and phrases. While you're a student at UWO, you'll have access to all of Polk Library's research databases, but you may also have access to research databases through your employer. CINAHL is the most comprehensive and relevant nursing database. Medline is also commonly used by nurse researchers. These two databases should always be included in your literature reviews, but you may choose to include others as well, depending on how comprehensive your literature review will be and what topic or question you're studying. Polk Library provides access to other databases you might choose to include, like ScienceDirect, Cochrane Library, and Nursing Full Text Plus. After you graduate, even if your employer doesn't have access to databases, you can still use PubMed, which provides free access to Medline through the National Library of Medicine. And your local public library will also provide access to some research databases with your library card. If you need some review on how to search databases to identify relevant current resources for your literature reviews, I've included a couple videos in this playlist that can help. Check out Searching for and Evaluating Health Information, Interdisciplinary Literature Searching for Nursing, and Finding Articles in Nursing Journals if you want a refresher. You can also always reach out to me for assistance with your searches. While not every literature review you conduct will be a systematic review, I always recommend doing some basic documentation of your searches and search parameters, just in case you decide that you want to expand your literature review into a systematic review for publication. The easiest way to do this is with a spreadsheet, where you can track the date of your search, the database you searched, the search terms you used, the limiters you assigned, such as peer-reviewed only, publication dates or article types, and the number of results you got. This will help you if you need to replicate your searches later, and if you end up doing a systematic review, you'll need these details to include in the methodology section. It is extremely difficult to recreate this data after the fact, so it's smart to capture it as you go. Once you've completed your searches, you need to be able to synthesize and evaluate the evidence you've found for practice. Creating and populating a table is a simple and clear way to compare and summarize the evidence. On page 99 in your textbook, Table 3-7 is one example of such a table. Each piece of evidence gets its own row in the table, and the interventions and outcomes are summarized for easy reference. The table also makes it easy to compare studies to one another, which will help you evaluate your body of evidence for quality, quantity, and consistency. Additionally, the table can simplify the process of determining where each piece of evidence falls in the hierarchy of evidence for practice, which can be found on page 72 of your text in Table 3-1. As you populate the table and describe the design of each study, you can refer to the hierarchy and assign a level to each piece of evidence. Looking at where your evidence falls in the hierarchy will allow you to determine the overall strength of the body of evidence you've assembled. If you have any questions about literature reviews and evidence-based practice, please contact me, Erin MacArthur, at my email, mcarthue@uwosh.edu, or by phone at 920-424-1361. Thanks for watching.